Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about some recent news that has come out from the Fox X-Men universe that does not have to do with the recent bombings of Dark Phoenix test screenings, and that is news on their other X-Men project, which is the New Mutants. Now, this movie is a much different vein than the traditional X-Men franchise. It's one of their first spin-offs aside from the Wolverine films and the Deadpool movies. This is really their first team spin-off. And it's basically been touted as it's kind of the very first kind of hardcore superhero horror movie. Now, there's been superhero movies in the past that have dealt with supernatural stuff. Blade with vampires, obviously, and then you also had Spawn and a few other little things that are mixed in there. But this is built itself as a full horror movie, as opposed to some of those other ones that kind of have horror supernatural elements, but don't really operate much like a horror movie. They operate more on a traditional level of an action movie or a superhero film. So here's the thing: is New Mutants. It's gone through a very long production cycle, and that's not a good thing in this case. It's not because it needs a long production cycle. Is because there have been various issues with it, and some more news came out today that apparently the reshoots, which were supposed to be scheduled to be done last summer at some point, were not done, and they are currently not scheduled to be done. So that raises some very serious questions about this project. And they did release a trailer that came out, and I'll link it in the trailer in the description in case you haven't seen it. But it's one of those movies that I was actually kind of interested to see where this thing would go, because I do like horror movies, and kind of combining that with the superhero genre would be pretty interesting. And it would be something that's kind of cutting edge, something that really hasn't been done before in the sense of combining those two genres and making it into something of a hardcore horror film. Now, Josh Boone is the director, and it's been stated that basically the ball is in Josh Boone's court. He has ultimate control over this project, and they're saying that he also has control over the reshoots and some various other things. And some of it is speculation, but for the most part, they said that basically he has creative control as long as he is still attached to the project or wants to be attached to the project. Now, here's just a brief history of the development cycle. Now, the movie, I believe, began filming in late 2017, early 2018. They had the cast attached, and the cast consists of a few fairly big names that are headlining it. Benicio del Toro, whose character has not really been revealed. Then you also have Maisie Williams, who is from Game of Thrones. Alice Braga, who, you've probably seen her in some films on and off on occasion. And then Anya Taylor-Joy, who is front and center as the character Magic. Now, this is, again, like I said before, this is a bit of a different take. New Mutants was basically an X-Men spinoff in the comic books. This is, again, taking it to the point where all of these young kids that are supposed to be mutants they're inside of an insane asylum, or what appears to be an insane asylum, or some sort of facility where they're kept indoors. And they're basically kept there for, they don't really explain any kind of the reasoning. Alicia Braga's character, or Alice Braga's character, appears to be some kind of a doctor that's examining them. It feels a bit more, it feels a lot like, in a certain way, the trailer they did for Glass, where they have Sam Jackson, James McAvoy, and Bruce Willis all in this what appears to be some kind of a mental hospital type of setting, and they're all in, they're all in hospital gowns, and they're being asked questions and stuff. It feels a lot like that, but again, this is taking the horror stuff to a bit more of an extreme. And so what happened was all these people got cast, they filmed the movie, and then they were saying that, okay, this movie is going to have some reshoots that are going to need to get done. And initially, it wasn't really reported the extent of them. However, it was reported later on that it might have been up to 50% of the film that was going to be reshot, and maybe even a character or two added in. Which is extremely substantial. And we've seen stuff like that happen recently as well with Solo, a Star Wars story, where the vast majority of that film was well, maybe not the vast majority, but over 50% of that movie was filmed reshot by Ron Howard after the departure of the original two directors. So it was going to cost Fox a lot of money to refilm. Basically, they'd have to refilm half the film, and might have to hire some new actors. They'd have to have the old actors come back, and it could have gotten very, very expensive. Now, what people are speculating now that they've made this announcement about the reshoots not happening is that Fox has essentially just said, okay, you know what? We don't really give a crap anymore. We don't really have this property anymore after a certain point. The deal is getting closed, and nobody really cares, so we're just going to put this thing out as it is, which could be a good or a bad thing. Sometimes reshoots work. We saw that with Rogue One, where a lot of those reshoots seemed to work for that movie, and the addition of Darth Vader into that film really did make it that much more enjoyable, especially the Darth Vader hallway scene. Now, aside from that, there are a few different places where this film could land, because Disney has stated that they will, as all of the Fox projects that are currently slated for the upcoming year will be released, which means New Mutants will be released. They just don't necessarily know where. Now, it might not get a theatrical release, which would be sad. I think if you put it in theaters, just the draw, as long as it's not god awful, the draw of it being a horror superhero film could bring up enough audience to something new to show it to make a profit. And again, I don't necessarily know what the production budget of this film is as of right now. Again, it hasn't been released, but it doesn't look like it's fairly large budget. It looks like there's a lot of fairly standard effects, not a lot of CGI or anything like that. But again, they haven't shown us much of the powers type of stuff in the trailers, or in the trailer, I should say, not trailers. It only has one. But you could see a theatrical release. You could also see it, which many people are speculating is this film could go on the Disney Plus streaming service, which will be premiering later this year. And I think that is very, very likely at this point. Basically, Disney at this point, now that they've bought this movie, they're just going to release it. They don't care. They're going to reboot the whole thing anyway. This movie will be just a little tidbit left over from the Fox X-Men universe, and nobody's going to care. And I think that's how they view it. I think that's how they will continue to view it with any of these other properties aside from Deadpool, because Deadpool is the only one that's really, really popular right now. Obviously, Dark Phoenix is not doing very well in test screenings, and they don't have a lot of faith in that movie after X-Men Apocalypse. So really the only part of that franchise that might survive is the Deadpool films, because they both did very, very well. So that's my thoughts on this, and you can put your thoughts in the comments of what you think of the New Mutants film, whether or not you think it is worth a watch, or whether or not you would like to see them put some more time into it and make it maybe a better film than what it is now, or if you just like to see it period, just for the novelty of it. Leave a like on the video, hit the bell for notifications, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?